Hi modelers, in this video I take a break from the boat deck and move to working on the aft well deck area. This is part 14 of my Trumpeter 1 to 200 scale Titanic build series. To begin the aft well deck, I turned my attention to step 2 in the Trumpeter instruction booklet that I had skipped earlier. The wood that I applied to the well deck area turned out pretty good, as the picture from the part 8 of the video series shows. But I didn't mention that I had painted the cargo hatch coamings black first. Now the coamings are the little tiny walls of the cargo hatch area. I don't know why they call them this, but that's what they call them. Now the reason that these cargo hatch walls are painted black instead of the orange brown light color known as dark mass that I used to paint the sides of the well decks is discussed in an article entitled "The Case for a Change in the Color of Titanic's Cargo Hatch Coamings," and that's found on that website titanic-cad-plans.com. So with the well deck wood in place and the areas needing painting were already done, I could apply all the parts shown in step 2 of the Trumpeter instruction booklet. Now since the bollards molded into the deck were cut off so I could apply the wood decking, I had to make them per the Ponto's instructions found on page 9. The picture shows the Ponto's parts needed to make the bollards. The first step was to drill the holes in the wood deck to fit the completed bollards into. To do this, I put the bottom plate part number B61 of the Ponto's kit where the bollard will sit and used its holes as templates to drill 2 1mm holes in the wood deck. Now to make sure the second hole was in the correct position, I put a bollard in the first hole so the plate would not move when I drilled the second hole. Once done, the holes lined up to the B61 plate just perfectly. The second step was to assemble the parts to make the bollards. To attach the 2 bottom plates, I used 2 1mm drill bits placed in a jig to keep the 2 plates lined up as I super glued them together. Once the glue was dry, I taped the completed bottom to the work surface ready to get the next part. I sat the center part, which is the Ponto's part number B32, in place on the bottom plate and then applied glue using a toothpick. And as one can see, these parts are pretty tiny. Now once dry, it was time to set the bollards onto the plates. And I used a jig with holes drilled at the proper distance and then superglued the bollards to the plate assembly. Once all the bollards were done, it was time to paint them satin black by putting them into a jig 8 at a time. And then once dry, they were ready to go. But before installing them, I needed to work on the Ponto's well deck bollard photo etched parts found on page 13 of the Ponto's instruction booklet. Now neither the Trumpeter instructions nor the Ponto's instructions detail the mast rigging, and I knew that some rigging attachment points attached to the side walls of the forward and aft well decks. Fortunately, the website titanic-cad-plans.com has an article entitled "Titanic's Standing Rigging and Associated Hardware" that details the rigging attachment points. As a result, I needed to make 2 additional brackets to attach to the photo etched bulwark as shown in the picture to the aft bulwark photo etched parts. I made the brackets using 28 gauge magnet wire and then cut off any excess length. Now the picture also shows 2 additional holes drilled into the photo etched bulwark part that I used to fit the brackets into. And the picture shows a plastic brackets that I had made And I was going to use those at first, but I did not like how they looked. And as a result of changing to the magnet wire, my first two holes drilled into the photo etch bulwark were too big. So I had to solder the magnet wire to the first bulwark part. But for the second bulwark part, I drilled a smaller hole of 0.8 millimeters and only needed to superglue the brackets to the bulwark. In both cases, I had bulges on the back side of the photo etch bulwark part. So I had to drill shallow holes into the plastic well deck walls to clear these bulges. This allowed the photo etch part to sit flush against the plastic well deck wall. And the picture shows the photo etch screens that I had not yet painted the orange, brown, dark mask color yet, so that needed to be done yet too. The aft well deck drains, also known as wash ports, are only surface molded into the hull. The forward well deck wash ports are molded holes, but for some reason the aft holes were not present. So I had to cut the holes out. Once all the wash ports were cut out, I painted the holes black to match the hull. So now all of the parts for step 2 were ready to be installed, and that completed step 2 of the Trumpeter instruction booklet. In the next video, I will be working on the poop deck. Now this will cover part of steps 19, 20, and 49 in the Trumpeter instruction booklet. So until next time, have a great day.